is that the meeting is being live streamed and live recorded for the purposes of us making minutes. We also want to welcome to our meeting online from Grant Thornton, we have Talima, and in the room from Veritao, warm welcome to Max Thomas, and they'll take us through their reports when we get to that on the agenda. But first item of business is the election of chair for FRAS.
Can I move,
Colin, and a second. Okay. Thank you, Patrick. Any other nominations? Okay. All in favour of Colin taking the chair? There you go, Colin. You've got it for another year.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your continued course. We shall Is that better? Right, item 2. If I could ask for nominations for deputy chair. Right. Heather has been nominated. David has seconded our Heather. You happy to take it on, Heather?
Yes.
Thank you. All in favour of Heather? Thank you very much. Heather, duly elected as deputy chair. Thank you. If we can move on to apologies for absence. I think we do have one, do we?
Yes, Chair, we've got George Jabor and also Tom Hind.
Thank you. Any more that we know of? Thank you. Move on to item 4, public minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of May. I take it these have been read, have been circulated. Is all in favour to sign these as a true record? Thank you. Members are reminded it's their responsibility to declare the nature of any personal, prejudicial and or disclosable interest relating to any agenda item immediately prior to its consideration, and are encouraged to fill in the form in front of you as a written declaration. Emergency evacuation procedure. Members will exit the door out onto the lawn in front of the building until everything is made all clear. Item 7, exclusion of the public from the meeting during consideration of item 1617 on the grounds that involves likely disclosure exemption information as defined in paragraph 1, 2 and part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act. Could I have your approval, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen?
Yep.
Thank you. If we move on to item 8, which is Grant Thornton's draft audit findings, and I believe, Selina, that's your cue. Thank you very much for coming along.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. So, good morning, all. I'll take this. I'll go through this report in a bit more detail. It's one of our key reports to the FRAS. One is the audit plan. This is our audit finding report, and finally the auditor's annual report, which is regarding the VFM. So one of our 3 key reports, Chair. So I'll go through in a bit more detail. And if you move to page 3 of the report, which covers the headlines. So I mean, we received authorities, accounts on time on the 31st of May, which was the deadline. And obviously, only we can say that a minority of 30% of financial draft accounts were available at that point. So the authority has done well to, produce the draft accounts and submit for the audit, and also published on a website. And we started our audit work from like July and August. In terms of, the key findings, we have not identified any adjustments that would impact authorities' general fund reserves. And we have identified some disclosure misstatements, which is included in Appendix B. And obviously, there are one recommendations arising, which is in page 26 of the report. In terms of where we are at the moment, Chow, we've sort of substantially completed our work like last year, this time. And there are a couple of things I want to sort of highlight in page 3, outstanding. One is obviously, probably may have noted in the draft accounts, there was a pension fund asset for the first time in local authority accounts. And we're still working with Pete and Pete's team in terms of finalization of that, and that's ongoing. I'm sure Pete will update the committee on that. And also the second point, which is also key, which is beyond our control, is our inquiries to North Yorkshire Pension Fund auditor. So those were sent, I think, April time. And we've said that, to respond back, late August, early September. So we have not received those as yet. We will follow those up, and subject to that's been received, and we perform our required work based on, the pension fund auditor. We are nearly, there with the main audit work. In terms of some of the, bullet points, we've sort of, completed the journals work and cut-off work as well, and they're bit on very little on land and buildings valuation. In terms of, once these are obviously done, there'll be Gareth and myself reviews, and then, the finalization of which we plan to do by end of September, subject to we clear all these points. And as it stands, obviously, it will be unmodified, clean audit opinion, as we have, issued in the past 4 years. So moving on to page 4, Chair. In terms of value for money work, that work has started, and our intention is to complete that by end of October, discuss with management, and come to the FRAS in, I think, 13th of November meeting with that report. So again, that's a bit earlier than last year, which we completed in December. And at the moment, the work my colleague is leading on that, and liaising with Pete and his team, and we have not identified any significant weaknesses. Obviously, we have not exercised our statutory duties, and no significant matters we need to report. And at the bottom of that page, importantly, I think this is our last year as the auditor of the park, the 5th year, and we can say that we had very good cooperation from the management, and also with the FRAS, my 2nd year as the manager here. And we would like to thank the management and the committee for your professionalism and cooperation over the last 5 years. Which we appreciate very much. Moving on to page 5, obviously I think it's good to give some context in local authority accounting. So last year the deadline was November 30th, and you can see 12% of local authority opinions were signed by November 30th last year, and the authority was one of them. So which is a big achievement. Though however small, the audit is an audit, and also the wider context. There are a lot of challenges in terms of backlog in local authority audits that GT as a sort of a leading supply of public sector audits, liaising with various stakeholders, including the department, FRC, and other regulators, National Audit Office, how we can sort of reduce those backlogs. In terms of the context to the park, I think we would like to highlight there are more and more authorities nationally are finding difficult to manage their budgets. Obviously, we know that we've discussed these for the last 5 odd years, and some authorities have engaged in various other investments, joint ventures, creating subsidiaries, and some have succeeded and some have not. And the key one is obviously excessive borrowings that certain authorities have taken on board, and obviously the current economic climate, interest rates increases, inflation, and finding very challenging to balance their books because of excessive interest charges. Coming back to the park, I think that there's no such issues. Obviously, as reported in your narrative report, you have no borrowings as at today, and that does not mean that you will borrow in the future. I think that's clear in the report as well. But I think what we recommend is that should be done on a prudent basis. Moving on to quickly go through. So that's the sort of headlines, Chair. I'm happy to take any queries later on when I finish presenting this report. Page 6, obviously, the key point I want to make here is, we have agreed the content of the report and, recommendations with Pete when we released this on the 16th of August. And obviously, there are some outstanding work that we want to complete before we issue the, that clean audit opinion. Page 7 of the report, obviously, the key point on the materialities, it has slightly changed since our audit plan on dated 3rd May. That's due to, we take the benchmark materialities, the gross expenditure in sort of your CIS, income and expenditure statement, and that has, changed year on year by about, nearly 25%. Due to that, we have increased, and you can see on that, what was the planning materiality and what was the final materiality. So I'll go into page 8, Chair. On the first one, we've completed that work management override of controls. There's no issues arising. In terms of land and buildings valuation and other significant risk, there are some minor work outstanding that my colleague Joe Hanks is working on, dealing with Pete and his team. Moving on to the pension work, obviously page 9 is pretty much, which we did in the past years, liaising with the pension fund auditor. As I said, we're waiting for their response, and once we receive that response, we will do the required work in order to complete that. So page 10, I'll go through a bit more on the pension fund asset. So as I mentioned, I've been in public sector audit for, probably nearly 20 years now. We've not seen a pension fund asset before, and this is common in most authorities. And at the moment, obviously, the the authority is working with the actuary to calculate that pension asset ceiling, and once that's calculated, obviously that we'll have further discussions with Pete and the team, and we'll make sure that that's been properly accounted or disclosed. In terms of the national context, we as a GT is liaising with all the suppliers, audit suppliers, SIPFA, NAO, to ensure that we do the right thing in this unusual sort of situation this year. And there are new accounting standards that's been used, which has not been used before, called IFRIC 14. And obviously that's the accounting principle that says how much you limit that asset in terms of recognition or disclosure. So that's where we are at this stage. And I have to say that the park is at the very advanced stages because of the deadlines, and when we started this audit, very advanced stages of this process, whereas some of the big local authorities are still liaising with their actuaries to arrive at this asset ceiling and dealing with the auditor. So from our perspective, Chair, it's obviously like the preparers of accounts, from Pete's side, it's new, and it's a key. You understand this fully and recognizing the financial statements correctly, and that's and we are progressing on that, and hopefully by end September we'll come to a conclusion on how we account for that. Page 11, obviously, there is a risk of fraud and revenue recognition. There's nothing to report on that. Page 12, obviously, key judgments and estimate. As it stands, we obviously concluded at the moment that assumptions made by the authority are reasonable and prudent. And the net pension, again, we need to complete the work, but there's nothing we need to report to you at this stage that your judgments, estimates are out of line, basically. Page 14, in terms of, I think this is again new for 22-23 in terms of a revised auditing standard called ISO 315. And we've done a bit more work on this on your main ledger system, and we have concluded that that they are working effectively to give that opinion on the main ledger that creates the numbers and the financial statements. Page 15 and 16, Chair, there's obviously our other requirements in terms of communication. There's nothing that that I need to flag up to the committee, that everything has gone as intended in terms of our standard communications. And page 17, obviously it's a standard, again, going concern. Obviously authority has no material uncertainty in terms of going concern, and the management assumptions are reasonable. That's a key point. Page 18, again, 18 and 19 are our responsibilities in terms of other information in the accounts. One is a narrative report, and the other one is annual governance statement. So we need to say in the opinion that they are materially consistent with our knowledge and understanding. You can see on we have nothing to report, and on the AGS point we have made a improvement recommendation, Chair, in Appendix B. Page 20, VFM, I think I picked that up. Its work is continuing, progressing well, and we are planning to issue that report and bring to the FRAS in November. I think date is 13th, FRAS committee. And page 21, which is an important, communication of independence. we can confirm to the committee that, everyone involved in this audit are independent, objective, and to give that, audit opinion of the authority. In terms of appendices, Chair, obviously I don't want to go in more detail, but page 25 covers our recommendation on that's improvement recommendation on the AGS and page 26 follow-up of last year's, which obviously you can see our comments. Page 27 and 28, as I mentioned, there are some disclosure adjustments that management has agreed to obviously amend the financial statements, and there's one unadjusted at the moment. I'm happy to take any queries on that. And as I mentioned, the draft audit opinion is on Appendix G, which is clean, unmodified opinion. So Chair, I'll pause at this minute and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. At the moment, we've got a clean bill of health, and we thank Pete and your team and Pete's team actually, for working together to come up with the report that we've got at the moment. Obviously, we don't see any hiccups at the moment, so we look forward to the pension funds coming forward. Any questions, anybody? Pete, crackle.
Not a question as such, but just take the opportunity to thank Talina, Gareth, Joe, and then the team. As always, it's actually been really good working relationship these last sort of 5 years. It's the last year for Grant Thornton. We'll see them again at MPA next month and in November. But as always, just to thank you, it does make life a lot easier when the two teams work well together to go through an audit. And also an opportunity as well to thank, I sit here for this report each year, but actually an enormous amount of the work is taken by Sandra and Claire in particular, Simon, Bryony. There's a number of people that do a lot of work to go into this position to get us here. And then just overall, I'm happy with the result of the audit and what's in the paper. There's a few small minor things there for us to pick up. The pension issue is obviously a substantial one, which I think probably will result in an adjustment to the accounts when we come to September, which we did expect when we published the draft accounts. And finally, just the recommendation that's come forward on the AGS, just that we're happy with that. I think it does help to strengthen our annual governance statement for next year, and it's a good recommendation for us to take forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. Malcolm?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's just a brief one. I don't fully understand why this pension amount is an issue. Am I right in just understanding that it's positive sort of thing, that we're often in a deficit? What further work are you waiting to hear on that?
So part of the issue is around how you actually represent it in the accounts and what value you represent.
Do I need to know?
I guess it's a big number in our balance sheet. It's one of our big liabilities alongside with our land and buildings. So as Talina, I'm sure, would say, the two things that they focus on as auditors, certainly from a balance sheet perspective and a materiality perspective, they're two of the very big numbers in our balance sheet that can certainly have big swings. And we're seeing that definitely as an exception this year, where we've got this £1.5 million pension asset, which, as he mentioned, is the first time that he's come across it in 20 years of public sector accounting. So when we came to the end of May, we had to effectively understand what we wanted to recognise, whether we recognise that £1.5 million asset, or actually whether we ought to be a bit more cautious of that. So that was a decision we had to take in absence of a decision amongst the auditors, National Audit Office and SIPFA on how to approach it. So we always knew there would probably be an adjustment to that number. Really, it's about, there's an asset there, how much of that can you recognise? How confident can you be in that asset? And it's that kind of decision point that we're trying to come to at the moment. I don't know if Talina wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. Yeah, I think into that, I think Pete described from Pete's point of view why it's important. And from our point of view, I think Gareth, issues an opinion that true and fair and materially correct, and your materiality is 232,000. And this asset is 1.5 million. So I think it's important the correct accounting treatment of that to give that opinion that the accounts are materially correct. So that's sort of the sort of root cause of the matter that people are trying to resolve.
Yes, thank you. Jim, did you want to?
Sure. It's absolutely right. So accounts and audit needs to be a snapshot of the position, but I'm also pretty sure that I wouldn't want to be buying anything against that asset because it'll be gone, I'm quite sure. So it's a bit of a quirk of the times, but I'm sure going forward that pensions will continue to be a liability.
Heather?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Mine's a different issue. Sorry, just to go back onto the assets on C about the assets. We've been looking at them, removing sort of assets which are no longer out of date or office equipment, etc. And we're halfway through just a review of the assets UEL. Sorry, what does UEL stand for? And how much of an impact will it have on the balance sheet? Is there a big amount coming off the asset register? Yeah, sorry.
Do you want to take?
I can take that if you want. Yeah. So UEL is useful economic life. So for every asset that we purchase, we put a number of years against that, which is the useful economic life we estimate for that asset. So it can be more than that or less than that, and we try and group it. So we sort of group vehicles under 5 years. Now, a Land Rover Discovery is probably going to last more than that, but we do try and group assets as much as we can. In terms of that tidy up of the asset register, we had some outdated elements on there that were hard to identify against a specific asset that had completely depreciated, so no effect value-wise on the accounts. So it was really just a tidy up of that asset register, a process of trying to get better identification for assets, individual assets, so we know when we sell them, and just a real clean-up of that process, which we started 2 or 3 years ago, but there was some historical assets to take off the register. But all of those were fully depreciated, so there was zero value in the balance sheet.
Thank you.
Could I just, if you sell one of those assets and there's income coming in, is that a problem then?
No, it generates a capital receipt, which we then treat appropriately in the accounts.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment? Do you need any more, Selena, or are you at the end of your?
No, I think I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, and if there are no questions, I'll observe the rest of the meeting. So thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for attending. We've got a clean bill of health at the moment, and thank you very much for you and your staff and Pete and his staff, or Pete's staff, and for working together so well, and hope this continues like next year when we have is it Azores coming in to take over. You'll be missed greatly, I'm sure, from the work you've done together with us. But anyway, thank you very much, and hope everything goes well with pensions and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Can we move on to item 9, which is the internal audit? We have Max Thomas come in today to give us the internal audit, and it's over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So there's 2 attachments to the report. The first is Appendix 1, which is the head of internal audit report for last year, so 22-23. And the second attachment is Appendix 2, the work programme for the current year. So I'll take Appendix 1 first. This is our annual report. It provides details of the internal audit work that we've completed during the year, as well as the reports we've issued. And importantly, it also provides you with our overall opinion on your framework of governance, risk management and control. So within Appendix 1 itself, there's various sections to it. Appendix A lists the the 5 audits that we've completed. Pleased to say they're all reasonable assurance opinions. Appendix B then provides further details about the scope, the findings, conclusions and opinions for those individual audits, and where we've identified areas requiring improvement, the actions that the authority have agreed to take. The overall opinion itself is given on page 5 of the report in paragraph 8, and that is a substantial assurance opinion. We're also required to identify any significant control weaknesses we've identified, and if we have identified any, to ask the authority to consider including those within the annual governance statement. We didn't identify any significant control weaknesses, so there's none that we're highlighting. You also need assurance that the internal audit work that's performed is undertaken to the relevant professional standards, and that importantly you can rely on the opinions that we are giving. So we do that by setting out details of our quality assurance process. So in Appendix D, it goes into some detail about what that process looks like, and hopefully why you can place reliance on our work. Just before I finish on the annual report, just want to say that we had very good cooperation from staff within the authority, so I'd like to thank staff for that. Where we did identify issues, those were accepted, and appropriate action plans were agreed. So that's last year's work. Looking forward to the current year, in Appendix 2, we set out the proposed internal audit work programme. In Appendix A, what we've done is just summarise the audits that we completed over the last 5 years to provide some context, and then the proposed programme for this year is set out in Appendix B, and that programme's been discussed with Pete and Ian. It's a mix of audits, and we've also included some time to undertake follow-up work, so checking that action has been taken where we previously identified areas for improvement. So that's hopefully provided sufficient information. I'm very happy to take questions on the report.
Okay, thank you very much. Have we any questions for Matt? While we're... Go on, Heather.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the summary of the audits. The opinions. Inadequate, and where I'm in saying that. Sorry,
So,
didn't obvious question.
Appendix C on page 13 provides the 4 levels of assurance that we provide, and provides a definition of what those opinions mean. So in giving an overall opinion of substantial assurance, that's effectively the best you can get.
I thought that makes sense.
Ian?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning to members that when Pete and I and Max and his colleagues are deciding and agreeing which audits are done each year, we're particularly keen to home in on areas where we think we're not perfect. It will be easy just to get Veritone to have a look at the stuff we think we're really good at every year, but we just feel there's not much point to that. And so the areas that we looked at last year were areas where either Peter or I just picked up 1 or 2 issues during the year, and we felt that asking Veritone to have a look would just help us work with the staff to improve. And the same this year. There's a couple of areas where we think we probably could usefully do a little bit better, and some advice from Veritone about how to go about doing that, which think will be useful. That's it. That's it.
Thank you.
Comment rather than the question here.
Any more questions? Go on then, John.
Just briefly, I wonder whether you could tell us a little bit more about where we have had some challenge in regards to visitor centres, only because that's the page that I'm looking at the moment. So about the work to review, when do we get presented with those review papers, and when do we get to tick them off? So,
Okay, what part of this year's report we will go through the action plan with Max and his team, and they will provide assurance to members that we've done all the stuff that we said we would do. And again, I'm strongly of the view that there's no point having internal audits and us signing off an action plan if we just file it and then carry on. But you know, you be assured, John, that the officers that are involved in these areas of work are involved in the audits and they're involved in the action planning. So and the stuff here is I think reasonably straightforward, and we have made all the improvements.
I think we'll get a report, say, because this on like last year's report for next year, as how it's gone and how we've improved. Any more comments? You've stunned us all, Max. Thank you. To be fair, you know, good luck with your plan for this year, and you maybe aren't on a 5-year survey. Do we keep going or?
Well, just to pick up Ian's point, it's meant to be a risk-based programme, so we will always prioritise the areas that we think will provide the most benefit to the authority. So yeah, it's not a strict programme, a cyclical programme. It will vary from year to year.
Okay. Well, members, if you haven't any more questions, thank you very much. Yes, good luck with this year's plan, and thank you for last year's. It made some interesting reading actually when you went through actions agreed and everything. So thank you anyway. If we can move on, we move on to item 10, which is Q1 finance update. Pete, if you can, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is the Q1 report, the first forecast of the year, which is generally light touch at Q1, where we look at some of sort of the most key things that are happening of concern in the year and make sure we forecast for those. And at the current point in time, our forecast is indicating a 10k deficit on the bottom line, which will be a 10k drawdown from reserves at this point. A couple of the main drivers around that are in our income streams. We've talked previously in the last month or two around planning fees. And the drop in planning applications that we're seeing, which is a broader issue than just the authority. And that's resulting in, at the moment, a forecast of about 70,000 deficit on our planning fees, which is a substantial amount on our base budget of about 220,000. The additional to that, we also programmed in at the half year an increase in the statutory fees, which we're expecting as part of government policy. But we understand that's likely to be delayed now to the 1st of April 24, so that's an additional 30,000 hit. So overall in that planning service sphere in the income, we're seeing about 100,000 hit in the forecast. We are being quite cautious in the forecast and quite prudent as well. So they may be a little bit on the cautious side, but that's probably a good plan to make sure that we can mitigate them if we need to, and just keep reviewing at Q2 and Q3 to see how that progresses. We've also seen as well a shortfall in education, which is something that we will talk a little bit more about. But just for the moment, the education service is undergoing a transition at the moment from core funding in some of its delivery to external funding. But as part of that transition, we are expecting a dip in fees before the external funding comes in and begins to fund that programme, which we expect to see making about a £50,000 reduction in income in year. But that would be for 1 year only. In good news, offsetting a lot of that is our investment interest. So our cash balances remain buoyant. We're seeing rates increasing since the point at which we set the budget. And as a result, we're seeing about £100,000 of additional income this year from investment interest in the forecast. So that is really helping offset some of those other income issues that we're having. And other areas that we look at obviously quite carefully each quarter, like car parking, is doing well in the first quarter, is on budget, which is quite a challenging budget. And even in July, it was only a small shortfall, given the weather we've had, which I think is quite a good achievement. And then just a note on retail at Danby Lodge. Is one of the areas we focus quite a lot on Danby Lodge in terms of investing in there and trying to get visitor numbers back to sort of pre-COVID levels. Again, we are seeing a fall off in terms of retail income there, and whilst it's not a big number, it is an indicator of that continuing performance issue. And another area that we've noted in the car park is that we have filled up quite a bit this summer, and have had some people being turned away because we've had no spaces. And part of that is because of the overflow car park, which as a result of the decarbonisation project is currently not in use. As a result, there's a recommendation in the report at 6.3. We didn't have anything in the budget to bring that back into use. So there's a specific recommendation to fund from the property reserve 22,000 to help bring that back into use this winter. So we don't have those problems occurring next year, particularly in light of our ambitions to grow the visitor numbers at Danby. In terms of the savings plan, we've already referred to the two elements of that are going to fall short this year, which is the education and planning elements. So we've talked about those on the income side. And that's the overall picture. In terms of that 10k deficit on the bottom line, we will obviously be looking to mitigate that in year. There's a number of expenditure areas, small expenditure issues we've managed to offset as well, about 40-something thousand. So again, we are working as officers all the time to identify where we can make in-year savings without any change to delivery. And then finally, there's one issue that's arisen very recently, which we spoke to the chair and the vice chair ahead of this, just in terms of additional recommendation for the report, which is that the Thornton-the-Dale car park has an access road, a bridge and an access road to the car park. The opportunity has arisen to get that road adopted by North Yorkshire Council. But to do that, we would have to spend some money to bring that road up to condition and to do relevant surveys ahead of that. That would cost about £30,000, but it would remove a significant liability for the authority, because at the moment, the whole of that access road and the bridge across the stream is our liability to maintain in the future, which will be very expensive work. So this is a really good opportunity that's arisen at the moment, at this current time, to spend £30,000 now to remove that liability from the authority for the future. As a result, it seems like a sensible way to go, but at the moment, as you can see from the 10k deficit position we've got in the forecast, we don't have anything in year that we can via at this point. So the recommendation is to use the contingency reserve to fund that £30,000 worth of work, because this is an opportunity now with that £30,000 quote to do that and remove that liability from the authority. And it's considered to be something we should do. It's unconventional to raise a verbal recommendation on the day, but this has come up quite recently and it's something that we ought to try to act on. Ian, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, because I know you've been talking to the council about it.
No, other than the North Yorkshire Council are happy to adopt that access road, which is a significant liability for us. So it is something we would like to get them to do.
What we do need, though, is a recommendation from this committee that we do push forward with this. And I ask for your approval, please, gentlemen, ladies, gentlemen. With a show of hands, please.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, please.
So how sure are we that the £30,000 is all that we are going to need to bring that access road up to spec?
Pete.
I've spoken to the highways engineer responsible for that area, and I've got confirmation in writing from him that that's the ceiling amount, so it won't go beyond that.
Right, Jim, please.
I mean, I take it from officers that this is a good thing, but £30,000 is a significant amount of money, and we need to be sure. And so I just wonder, what's the time scale for having this sorted out? It's quite unconventional to spend £30,000 without some sort of a report. What's North Yorkshire's time scale, and why does it have to be here and now. I'd like to know what we think the cost of the liability in the next 5 years is going to be, so we can get some idea of what the benefits of spending this money would be, just to make it value for money. And I don't know whether in September NPA pops up quite soon, whether there might be. I'd be happy to give the go ahead to get the details, but I just think I'd like to have some sort of assurance that we could audit if we're going to spend that money.
That's a helpful comment, and we'll include something in the finance papers for September at NPA, and specifically ask for members' approval for that. I don't think anything's going to spoil for the sake of 4 weeks. But the proposal will be similar in terms of funding, but we can put some written detail about what we think our liabilities are likely to be.
Heather?
Yeah, so we had a brief conversation on that.
Yeah.
I understand that it's North Yorkshire Highways that actually do the work. I mean, they're the ones. So, if they're the ones that are going to do it, and there's something going wrong, I mean, that they're going to adopt the road. So it's in their best interest. I mean, it's common practice of adopting roads. They do up to has to be certain standards for adopted. But as as Tim said, it's probably, but highways that do North Yorkshire Highways are actually carrying out the work, or they're being. I'm assuming that's right. Thank you.
Right, David?
Thanks, Chairman. Looking at the income and expenditure summary, I'm wondering whether we can do more to promote Danby Lodge, a real asset in the middle of the national park there. I'm sure that the visitors who do go there get a very enjoyable experience. But our numbers have been down there, and it's resulted in low retail sales in a shop that has a great array and wide range of well-priced products. I wonder whether we can do more to take on board some publicity and promotion of Danby Lodge as a whole. I just put it forward as a suggestion.
Thank you, Chair. We're concerned about the level of visitor numbers at Danby Lodge. For example, pre-COVID, numbers were hovering around 90,000 per year. It suffered significantly in COVID, and like many visitor attractions, hasn't had a post-COVID bounce. So visitor numbers were around about 45,000 last year, which of course gives us a significant hit in terms of car park income and retail income. Lucas St John, who's our visitor centre manager, is working with the staff there and is coming up with a plan for Danby. We need to reinvigorate some aspects of the site, notably the children's play area, because that's a significant draw. But what's currently on site it is getting close to 20 years old, and while it was something special when it went in, it isn't anymore. So there's some stuff we need to do there. We feel that we need to make some improvements to the site, and then you're absolutely right, that needs to be combined with a significant effort in terms of our comms to get people there. We're certainly of the view that the market at Danby is different to Sutton Bank. It's likely to be much more family orientated, and so the improvements that we'll make will be around those sorts of areas. And just to give you some sense of scale, we're getting about 45,000 visitors a year at the moment to Danby Lodge, about 135,000 a year to Sutton Bank. So things, despite the fairly mediocre weather through the school summer holes, income's holding up pretty well at Sutton Bank. Visitor numbers are strong, and we need to put our time and efforts into reinvigorating Danby Lodge.
Thank you. Okay. Just a minute, Pete, can come in.
Yeah, I was just going to come back on the Thornton and the Dale point. I think it's September MPA. We don't have a finance paper, but we can work out which paper to bring it in. And in terms of value for money, it's a really valid point. I think resurfacing that length of road and maintenance of a bridge over a period of, for the authority of sort of 20, 30 years is undoubtedly going to be way, way, way above £30,000. But I think we do need to do that piece of work then that just brings back that reassurance and look at that longer time scale, because it's a one point in time decision at which we get to get this road adopted. But that decision then has an effect for the authority for many, many years into the future in terms of recurring maintenance of that road and facility.
Is that okay, Jim? Okay, Christine.
Thank you, Chair, and with apologies for bouncing back and forth between the two financial issues on the table at the moment, but just back to the Danby Lodge and thanks for what you had to say there. What you didn't say, I guess, and what I wanted to ask for is, are we going to get a paper then at some point about kind of an overall strategy for Danby and how the various investments that have gone in recently, in addition to the car park investment, are going to provide the turnaround you're looking for?
Yes, I mentioned Lucas and John, our commercial manager. He's prepping a paper for our September SLT, at which point we'll agree at what we think are a programme of works. You've previously allocated some monies for improvements at Danby, but yes, we ought to provide you with a paper pulling all of that together so that you understand exactly what we're trying to do and what the plan is.
Helpful, yes.
Mm-hmm. Right, any more questions? Jim, come on.
Slightly separate issue, Chair, but it's just on the outdoor learning that Pete mentioned, and there are some changes going on in that team and the output that we have. And I did have a conversation with Tom a little while ago, and I think members would have had an email just the other day that sort of rather lengthily set that out. But I just, to be honest, I had a few questions about sort of what we were going to be doing and what we're not going to be doing. And I just think, I wonder, Chair, if you could just put that forward to the private business so that if there were some questions that members wanted to know about, that they could ask that frankly without being on live stream.
Okay, I think we can do that. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Have we any more questions? Malcolm, come on.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's driving me crackers.
I was just going to comment on on the point about the money and the things. I think it'd be helpful. I think in the report you bring to us, if you can just make it clear sort of how much maintenance will happen over the next 30 years. I mean, how much would we, if we don't spend this 30,000 now, how much would we planning to spend this year? I'm just and I'm not quite clear where this came. Was it a County Council's initiative, or was it our initiative, and why is it so urgent? It's in one way of looking at it is that we're now going to spend 30,000 quid we haven't budgeted for to give the County Council a nice new road that they don't have to do anything with for a long time. I don't wish to sound cynical about this, but
to be fair, I thought that was a good move, really. For the next 100 years, we're going to spend more than 30 grand.
We can see the point I'm making, I think.
Oh yeah, I can see that. But
so I think
if we are getting rid of a bridge and a road, so we don't have to do any updates on it, then that must be one hell of a good move. But Pete, did you want to say something?
Well, all I'm saying, Joe, is can we just have that information in the report you bring it to us? Just to clarify.
That's fine, Malcolm. Yeah, we'll bring that information.
I was just you mentioned outdoor learning, so I'll leave that point till we're private.
Okay, we're going to private session for that one. Any more comments? Right, we have 3 recommendations here. If I take the 30k for the bridge and roadway, that we leave that till NPA in September. Is all in favour? Thank you.
I'd be happy that the FRAS says that we should be doing something about
We should
this,
go ahead with it.
but we do need some information to sign it off. I think.
So just for clarification, we've agreed that we bring forward either a paper or a substantial part of one of the MPA papers seeking member-specific approval for that expenditure, and will include the background detail that several members have asked for. And so we've raised it here, but we'll bring it back to you for approval.
Okay, everybody happy with that? Right. The second one, as you'll note, is the members approve the 22k drawdown for the from the property reserve fund for the car park works at Danby Lodge. All in favour of that one? Thank you. And members, if you note the contents of this report. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. We didn't know whether Ellen was going to manage to get here in time, but we look forward to a report. Ellen, it's up to you. Thank you.
So the external funding position is going quite well. So in this report, I've added a sort of colour coding to the graph, to the forecast for which is in table 1 on page 2, which was requested at the last FRAS, which shows in red, the secured funding position that we're at the moment. And then in blue is the possible funding should we be successful with the funding submissions that we've done recently, just to give you a picture of what it could look like compared to what it is at the moment. So as you can see, we've exceeded the target for this financial year already, and previous financial year as well. So this gives an oversight for the whole of the business plan period. Then section 4 is about the current external funding activity. So it just gives you an idea of what submissions we've done recently since the last FRAS. And there's quite a few updates since the report went in as well. So with the Climate Action Fund, we went to the National Lottery Community Fund for just shy of £1 million. We originally went in back in January, but we were pushed back because the partnership part of the application was not very strong. And this was all to do with work along the Esk catchment area, engaging communities and doing lots of things like citizen science and all sorts of different work with landowners, just to make sure that the catchment area is going really strongly. So we have had news since this report that we are through to the full application stage for that. So that's really good news, because normally the lottery wouldn't invite you forward to a full application if they were not quite positive that it was going to be something that they would fund. So we have to submit the full application by the end of, well, I'm pushing for the end of October because they have asked the end of September, but it's a bit busy, as you'll see in a minute. So that's the Climate Action Fund. With North Yorkshire Council's Shared Prosperity Fund, we submitted the application, as you were talking a moment ago, about improvements to Danby Lodge, but also to Sutton Bank. So sort of connecting projects to do with art and the Tramper Trail and play areas. So we should hear about that soon. I think there's a panel meeting for the decision on the 11th of September, so that's imminent. Another update as well is that the Grubs Up project, which we submitted to the Heritage Lottery Fund, which are managing the fund, the Species Survival Fund for Natural England. We've been invited through to the final round for that now since this report went in. So that's nearly £700,000 for the Beelines project. So it's connecting habitats along the coastal pathways and down towards the AONB. So that would be a really nice project if that comes forward. And then there isn't any updates on that. And then successes is the next part of the report. So we were really lucky to have a success with the Species Recovery Capital Grant Scheme. So that's just shy of £500,000 to replace 2 fords over the River Esk with bridges. So then there's a natural functioning river. So that was really a good success because that was a very competitive process. So, and we had some really nice feedback from Natural England for that application as well. And then a sort of other end of the scale of funding, we had some funding for the water vole and small pearl bordered fritillary, bit of research to see what the data is looking like for that for 18-month project. So that's just around 22,000. And then you've got the Rosedale Kilns. This won't be any sort of funding that goes through the authority, but it's worth you knowing about that. We're working with landowners around a countryside stewardship agreement. So DEFRA have said that they would like to fund the conservation of the kilns, but it's all very up in the air at the moment because they want the work to happen before the payments come forward, and it's a hefty sum. So we're looking at working with the commoners around how that's going to work. So that's Miles's piece of work. And then before I go on to the future external funding, we have also been informed that we were successful with the peatland restoration application. So that's about 1.2 million. And that's really, really good news. We were thrilled, but so that's a sort of second stage at the moment. Ed is doing all of the investigation work around the peatland work, which has been funded previously, but this is the next stage actually to restore the peatlands and working with landowners on that. So it's a £1.6 million project, but we've got 1.2 million and the rest would be funded through Section 106. So that's really good news. And then moving on to the future external picture, as you know, we've got the project development manager now in place, and myself and Mark, who's got that post, we're working really closely to make a really good portfolio of projects to take forward to funders. So he's been training staff to write some project plans around all of the project ideas that everybody has, so then we can come to you and say this is the portfolio of projects going forward. And I've done a sort of snapshot of those that are being looked at the moment. So we've got an application due to go to DEFRA for the landscape recovery round 2, and so we're looking at projects around that. Of course, the health and wellbeing projects and the arts projects, and another apprenticeship team, and things that the CMP for Bransdale. We're looking at what sort of projects are coming out of the report that we can tap into now, and any other sort of peaked projects which was not eligible for the current project funding that we've got, and the observatory at Danby. And so yeah, and also a couple of funders have launched new strategies. So we've got the National Lottery Community Fund have launched their strategy, which has a really strong environmental element now, which is lovely because they didn't have that before. So that's the standard lottery, not the heritage lottery. So that's opened doors for us to tap into. And then the Heritage Lottery Fund, Tom Hind has been to their round table now, so it's looking quite nice that we can go to them for a substantial landscape scale project in the future, which would be about a 10-year project. So we're looking at maybe project around the Esk, because the work is really ramping up in that area. So they're keen that we put in an application because they seem to like national parks at the moment. And also national parks partnerships. So today is the deadline. We're submitting a sort of portfolio of projects to the national parks partnerships, who will take that to interested companies. So they've put a call out for projects. So that's what we're doing today. So that's where we're at. And then I've broken up the tables now. So previously it was all in one table, but I've done a table for funding applications that have been submitted and are waiting a decision. And those that have been unsuccessful, and those that have been recently funded. So you can see a little bit clearer now where we stand with our external funding picture. And I think I did it in the last meeting actually, is colour coded it so you can see that we've got a breadth of projects that cover the management plan, because it is obviously quite strong with conservation team, but that's only because it's flavour of the month with the government at the moment. But we are working on several projects which cover other departments and all across the whole of the business plans. So it's not just a focus on conservation. It will be, when Joel starts, it will be really strong. More strong with health and well-being and arts and cycling projects and things like that. So that's to come. Thank you. I think that's it.
Thank you, Ellen. Obviously another, since the last FRAS, another hard-working session for you.
Yeah. And everybody.
And everybody else within the authority working with you. It's a mammoth task actually trying to get money out of anybody. So, you know, congratulations, and hope you carry on in the same vein. Any questions from Patrick?
Thank you, Chair. This is a really encouraging paper. You're obviously, you and your team have been so hard. Fantastic range of projects aiming for. I've got a couple of questions I'm really interested in to see this aspect of National Park. One, the lottery grant. You've got through to the next stage, applying for £955,000, big sum. Does the lottery give you a grant for your team to work up the application?
No.
That's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time, and unfortunately not. But with the it depends on the funder, but with the National Lottery, they will fund full cost recovery. So when we do the full budget, it will include all cost recovery. So such as Bryony's time, or we can put that in as match funding, which makes it much stronger because she's funded by other areas, or we can sort of help out core by, you know, funding that instead of core funding it. So
it's an element of that risk.
Yes, oh, absolutely, all the time. So with that, well, you know, with Ed's application where we've got the 1.2 million, it was probably about 6 weeks of work, but full work for a week. So it was, you know, that was just mine and Ed's focus for a whole week. So it is a lot of money to risk, but we were quite confident, and we would only work on these things if we were quite confident we would be successful. So.
Well, good luck with it. I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, just one more question.
Go on.
Good news, because I was going to ask you this meeting on the Peatland restoration, because the outcome expected August. The outcome is good.
Yes.
Cool.
But I just wonder in the future. So the total value of the grant to the national park is 1.245 million. What would be helpful in the future is of a total of what percentage is that of the overall project?
Okay.
So is that a £3 million project, or is it a 1.3 million? You know, are we getting a 90% grant or a 60% grant?
Yeah, good point. So it's a 1.6 million pound project with a grant of 1.2. So yeah.
So just I don't want to add to your work at all.
That's okay. I don't mind.
Interesting to know what percentage of the project that is.
Yeah.
That's 75%.
I wasn't going to do that.
Anyway,
yeah, good idea.
Yeah, Jim.
I was going to say that. I mean, it's good going if we can take our own Section 106 money and then multiply it by 4, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But are there any other contributors to that project? I was just wondering, you know, they're saying, you know, we like the people who benefit should have a bit of skin in the game, as Tom would say. Who's benefiting and are they contributing?
I don't know the answer to that. That would be a question for Ed, and I think a lot of it is to be worked out as well. So yeah, I'm not sure about that. Sorry. Yeah.
Excellent. Could I just ask a small question? You mentioned there was 2 bridges over the River Esk. Which are they?
I remember one is Butterbet, and I can't remember the other one now. But
That's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
They were already ones that were previously identified before the funding came out. So we were already ready with permissions and things to do it. So I think they've identified through the Blue Corridors project several fords and obstacles that can be repaired. So these are 2 have been identified as the ones that are sort of shovel ready, that we could go to the funder and say we need these 2 doing.
I do know Butterbeck. So.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Well, Chris.
Just in response to the previous question, the bulk of the additional money restoration is from building mine, so clearly they need to get some recognition of that. Yeah. To the west. And who's ever peats being restored, it'd be nice for as well.
There's 9 sites altogether, so it's quite substantial. So but not all, you know, some of them may not happen. I don't know, but we'll have to see how the project unfolds. It's only a very short project for 18 months, so lots could happen in that time. But yeah.
Do we send a note to Bogus saying this is, or do we wait till the restoration fund is finished and then?
I'm sure we do, but this is going to be quite a part of the stakeholder forum meeting at the end of September on our management plan, and we will be showcasing the peat restoration project, and of course Twinby will be invited there. So
okay, fine. Any more questions for Ellen? Well, thank you very much.
It's okay.
And thank you for you and your team and all the authority members that you've gone into putting forward their expertise to getting this money. You know, we're much appreciated, and thank you very much anyway.
Probably worth recording in our minutes.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just on the recommendation, better not forget it. Members approve the contents of the report and agree the current work being done to secure external funding. Thank you, Ellen. Brilliant. If we can move on to strategy and business plan monitoring, Paul will give us that update as to how to read the graphs and funds, etc. It's up to you.
Good morning, members. So in front of you, it's the 3-month update of our key performance indicators. This is a piece of work that we're kind of evolving over time. There's been some consolidation of some of the data, and 1 or 2 things have come out. Really, some on hand to kind of take any questions. It's probably worth me going through the ones where it's underway but behind target. So the first one's footfall through the national park centres. On the face of it, that looks kind of positive, but A, it's only a quarter, and B, you'll be aware through the previous discussions around Danby Lodge that we have some ambitions in that. So when Jill Brookfield starts, I think we want to make this one a bit smarter, in terms of making it a bit more challenging. So in the meantime, we've marked that down slightly. The one on awareness by non-visitors is underway and behind target, but only just. Appeals, again, slightly below, but it's only on the basis of 3 planning applications. So again, it's only 1 quarter's data. So again, not too much to worry about. Staff costs, again, slightly behind, but we've got lots of irons in the fires on external funding again. So hoping that one's going to improve over time. And then the main ones are around woodland creation and hedgerows and Section 106 spend with the conservation team. Unfortunately, Bryony isn't here to kind of explain everything. But if you've got any questions on any of that, I can hopefully try and answer them.
Any questions for Paul? I know one thing, Joe's going to have to hit the ground running when he gets here.
I'm aware that some of the health and wellbeing targets are not that smart at the moment. And as we get more information over time, and as that work ramps up, I'm quite keen to work with him to make it a little bit smarter.
Any questions? Go on, Malcolm.
No, it's not a question, it's more a comment really. I mean, I think if officers have some concerns about how some of the, you know, the underway but behind side that are doing, it'd be useful if you just highlighted those in the report. Because you say some of them, like the planning one, it's just a numbers thing at the moment, and based on 3, it doesn't really matter. Others may, you know, some of them are more important than others.
Yep.
And I think if there's any concerns that you want to draw to our attention, it'd be useful to just clarify it in the report. So the way you have done it in the introduction, then just be helpful.
David?
2 points I think are very interesting. Under objective 4, maintain staff turnover at 7%. Staff turnover is just 1.5. Which I think is very, very encouraging. And the paragraph mentioning volunteer satisfaction level, satisfaction level is 88%, which I think is really good, particularly in these days when we're promoting people who get more involved with nature and health and well-being. So I think it's a really excellent finding. So.
Anyone have a comment? Jim.
Just to back up what David said, I mean, when you're talking about health and well-being, you know, those ratings must translate into health and well-being delivery, and we've got more work to do to kind of ramp that up. You know, I was sort of thinking about engagement work and those things, and if we follow our ambition to make those into health and well-being, you know, maybe our rangers should be well-being officers. You know, by doing all that stuff, it's just how we count it, isn't it? And I remember when we had this health and well-being strategy at the forum a little while ago, I did think, you know, the actual spend allocation that we have allocated to delivering health and well-being was pretty small, and it's hard to see in truth that unless we shift some of those impetuses to be branded, if you like, as health and well-being instead of just engagement, unless we start shifting some of that effort and counted as health and well-being, it's going to be very difficult to make a substantial investment in it. So just a thought for the future.
Thank you. Any more comments? Oh, sorry, Christine.
Thanks, Colin. So I know obviously Brian's not here, but I think on the list of those targets that are a bit disconcerting, it would be good subsequently to get a little bit more detail around the section 106 spend, which looks radically behind.
That's a new one in that we just put in, and it's only quarter.
I think for the next time we put this to members, we'll certainly make sure that we cover that.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Thank you very much, Paul. You know, it's good to keep the old traffic light system up to date so that we can see where everything's going and what everything's doing. So, you know, we look forward to the next one as to how far we've got. But thank you very much. Okay. I believe there's a recommendation. Members note the scorecard. Members noted. Thank you. If we can move on to item 13, health and safety. Ian, you could please.
Thank you, Chair. This is our quarterly update, and the report's fairly straightforward, but a couple of items I would like to pull out. sickness absence in the first 4 months of this year, our sickness absence rate was very, very low indeed at the 0.4 days per staff member. And that also includes one longer term absence, which has been well managed by the individual's manager, and they're now happily back at work, and we've put in place a number of adaptations and some additional IT kit. So that it is a nice example of how to manage longer term absences and get people back at work as soon as we can. One issue with regard to accidents and near misses that's caused the Ranger team some angst particularly through the early part of the summer when it was very, very warm, was the sap from common hogweed was causing some burns and blisters to our teams when they were brush cutting. Even though they were wearing long sleeves, sap went through the clothing and sat on the skin. Quite unusual for common hogweed, and certainly some of the Rangers hadn't come up against that before. But we've done a number of things around that. Where we can, we're stopping using brush cutters and we're just using mowers, which obviously the debris goes down instead of up. We've certainly taken some advice from other organisations about personal protective kit. And so there is some moisture resistant long sleeves that we can equip our folks with. Not all that comfortable to work in when it's warm, but it is better than the consequences. And on some of the very regularly cut out paths, Rangers will also be able to liaise with landowners to take out stiles or temporarily remove bits of fencing, so that instead of using brush cutters, we can actually get mowers in instead. So that, again, I think is a good example of a problem popping up and staff on the ground finding some good solutions. Now, whether that's just an issue caused by an excessively warm and dry June, or whether that or what it is, I'm not sure, but certainly one for us to keep an eye on and keep those workarounds going as we move into spring next year. Tick-borne encephalitis we mentioned last time. There's again been mentioned this in the press, and certainly staff who are out working in the field do report that there are an awful lot of ticks around, and despite wearing long sleeves and all the protective kit, they should do a substantial number of bites. So we've reminded throughout the summer of what staff need to look out for, and to go and see the GP, and on occasions educate the GP about what they might be looking at as well. But touch wood, no issues around that. Part 7 of the report is just some commentary on our health and safety action plan, and that's going as we would want it to. So I'll pause there, Chair. Very, very happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ian? No. Thank you very much, Ian. The recommendation is that members note the report, and thank you very much. If we can move on to item 14, which is the corporate risk register.
Okay, it is that. Thanks, Chair. Again, this is our quarterly update. But for those of you that are looking some detail at the appendices to this report, you'll see the presentation has changed slightly since last time, but the guts of the information remain the same. Part 3 includes a commentary on each of our corporate risks. And so again, the mitigating actions are progressing as we would want them to. At the last meeting, we brought you up to date on an emerging risk with regard to a developing landslip on Leversham Estate that was encroaching on the North York Moors Railway. And we informed you that we talked to our insurers, and to cut a long story short, they'd advised us to implement some electronic monitoring of the landslip. We've now let a contract, and we're going through the various permissions that we need to get that kit installed on site, and that should all be done next month. And what that equipment will do is provide at 30-minute intervals readings about any movements in the landslip, and we'll be able to make sure that a member of staff at North Yorkshire Moors Railway receives that information at the same time that we do, so they'll be able to make any operational decisions that they need to about the safe running of their trains. And insurers confirm that if we do that, we are more than adequately covered in the event of any accident. I'll pause for breath there, Chair, and happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I'll just ask one if I can first. 30-minute update, is that enough? If it goes, it goes. I'm going to give you 30 minutes warning.
Yes, I mean we have to do what insurers regard as reasonable, and they believe that to be reasonable. And also there's a cost to this, and there's just a balance of cost and reasonableness.
Yeah. Any more comments, Malcolm?
Yeah, just in relation to the landslip, I think last time he said it was going to cost around about 50,000. Is that the sort of number that it's coming at?
Not far off. It was slightly higher, but we've found the money to do that, and I'm also pursuing NYMR still, because I'd like them to make a contribution, because part of this is to ensure the safety of their operation. There's a cost for the equipment to be put in, and then there's an annual cost, and we've signed up for the landslip to be monitored for 3 years, after which time hopefully it'll either have gone or we'll feel that it's has resolved itself. So I'll have to come back to you. The annual cost is relatively small. The setup cost is the significant one.
It slips.
Yeah, it's moving. We have put in place a very simple, but I think actually good system of putting some posts in the ground across the landslip, and then either one of our rangers or one of our conservation team goes out every couple of weeks and takes a photograph. And I did go out on site about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and you could see that what was a perfectly straight line now wasn't, and it's slowly moving. We've had geologists and experts look at that, and it will at some point move on to the railway. The NYMR are quite relaxed about that, and landslips are an occupational hazard apparently if you're running a railway, so they're not overly concerned, and they have insurance cover for if it engulfs their track to get it cleared. The issue that we're concerned about is you might not get that much notice, and so that's why we've installed the monitoring equipment, so that if the land starts moving reasonably quickly during an operational period, they can get that data and then make a decision about operating their trains.
Yeah, I've recently experienced a road in Great Ayton where they had a landslip subsidence, which is more related to water. I just want, it's essential, we have to have it. I mean, obviously, NYC use similar things on areas. I mean, we've had some big issues, haven't we, when Kelsgill and things have happened overnight, and doing nothing isn't the answer. And equally, our insurers must come across this, not on a regular basis, but they're the experts. I think we have to be guided by them. Just on the reason for landslip, I mean, I'm not familiar with it. I presume it's a bank. I mean, landslips are often caused by water. I don't know. I mean, is there anything that we've done to try and alleviate the fact that this is there's also, I presume we've tried to do that, haven't we? I mean, without giving a great report on it, we've considered that first, haven't we?
Yeah. The essential problem is the Victorians drove a railway through through a cutting and have thereby sort of created the circumstances. There's loads of stuff about Victorian drainage if you're interested, and the Victorian engineers did a fantastic job on that. But as time goes by, some of those drains start to break down. We have cleared out what we can. We did get some prices for an engineering solution to it, and it was absolutely eye-watering and well beyond anything that we and our insurers felt was reasonable.
Thank you.
Any more comments? I think we'll just have to hope that landslip doesn't go in a rush. Or hope it goes in a rush and we don't need to monitor it anymore. So
Sure, we can give some good advice from Scarborough, Mr. Chairman. We've had our moments in the last few years.
I don't know that we need to ask them, do we? The recommendation, members, is that we note the contents of the report and the appendix, making any comments they wish to do. Thank you very much. If we can move on to the item 15, committee effectiveness self-assessment questionnaire. You're taking this, Pete.
Yeah, so this was CIPFA, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, recommended a little while ago about what would be good practice for audit committees, audit and risk committees like this one, in terms of being able to assess their performance, to make sure that they have in place what's needed to be able to perform effectively as a committee. And to have a self-assessment, to be able to monitor that and put in any action plan that might be needed to help be more effective, and some learnings. 2 years ago, the external auditors included that as a recommendation in their value for money report, that we put in sort of this kind of assessment. And following that, then Tom Hine did his governance review quite recently, in which he incorporated that as well as a finding to sort of bring that forward. So this paper brings the questionnaire that we've pulled together to propose to be the questionnaire for the process, just for you to be able to have a look at that and maybe comment back on any particular questions or any issues you might have with the content. The self-assessment itself is to cover all aspects of what the FRAS committee does. And the intent is that we ensure that as a committee that we have all the aspects that we need and that CIPFA identifies to be a good committee, in terms of good membership, balanced objective opinions, good challenge from officers, that members are getting the reports that they need in a timely fashion with the detail that's needed, a lack of bias in the committee, those kind of things. The principle behind the questions is 20 questions in there, that it covers all kind of aspects. So risk management, health and safety, internal audit, external audit, financial reporting, value for money. It's not intended to be a purely financial report. It really is looking at all the operational aspects of this committee. And I'm hoping that it covers all areas of it. So the function of the committee, the behavioural and operational aspects, the skills and expertise within the committee, the information that's provided to the committee. And hopefully, as a broad 20 questions, it covers all those bases. So really, it's an opportunity for members to have a look at that, comment on any of the questions, so we can make any adjustments prior to sort of going ahead with that in February 24 as the first time that will come out. And the idea is that it will come out for everybody to respond to, including both members, officers, and regular committee attendees, such as internal and external auditors.
So do you need any input into this now, or is it members to go back and look at? And
I mean, if members have read the paper, then they may have some comments on the questions that are included in the questionnaire in the appendix that we can, and there'll be plenty of time after that as well if anybody wants to come back afterwards too. But the questions are all there in the paper, so if there are any comments on how they're laid out or the contents, then happy to take those and make amendments.
Has members been through it, and does any additional ones? Go on, Tom. Take that.
I think it's quite a good idea. You could make a lot or a little of it, couldn't you? So will members just have this ability, like we would do our register of interests and hand it back? Is that the plan?
Yes, the idea would be to hand it back and then produce a summary of what's there, and hopefully that summary and any comments that are put in alongside would help to identify any specific areas that maybe we can address as an action plan.
I did mention it briefly, not wanting to, but particularly if it's members sort of associated with the committee, as well as the main members, it might be handy just to have in those questions. It might be handy to have the terms of reference or the things that you're assessing. Otherwise, it's a bit of a stab in the dark, isn't it? So a little bit more information about the assessment that you're making in 1 to 5 might get you some more consistent results. So yeah, I think I'd probably have to go and look up the terms of reference myself before I fill this in.
Absolutely. Well, Malcolm.
You know, there's a bit of subjective stuff here on a personal level, isn't it? How good is your understanding of, and there's a whole list of things. But the other, you know, do committee members clearly understand the interface between FRAS? So the question is, do all members understand? So we're answering saying, do we think all members understand? It'd be interesting to see whether officers have a different view to members on that. But anyway, let's give it a whirl.
I think the idea would be to sort of consolidate the results. That kind of scoring would help then, instead of individually that person does it. It would help to understand, maybe, say for example, you've got the 6 areas. Do you understand the sort of value for money, financial, internal, external audit and responsibilities? If one of those across everybody was lower than the rest, that might indicate a particular area that maybe needs a bit of extra training broadly. So hopefully we'll bring out some results of the summary basis for everybody that indicate maybe lower levels in certain areas and points to address.
I think it is useful for us to have a more discussion about results.
To be fair, this is just the questions that are going forward in February, isn't it? Yeah. Right, Christine.
Thanks, Chair. I was just picking up on the point Malcolm sort of made there about it's asking us to assess about all committee members. Is there any, would there be an additional value, I guess, in asking us to sort of self-evaluate in the sense that you might get a more, I don't know if it'd be better or worse, to be honest, but it would be a different perspective on that around particular skill areas. I was just thinking about the relationship between that as well and any training that people might need, you know, as to whether that's an entire committee thing or if there's a specific individual that would require some, you know, background around a particular area to be up to the right standard.
Yeah, it's a good part. I'll consider that and how we might try to capture both things if we can.
Any more comments at the moment? We take, well, no doubt everybody's ready, but will it be all right to come back at the next FRAS and for more comments on it?
I wouldn't want to go overboard with this. We could end up doing a whole audit ourselves.
No, we're not auditing, we're just looking at it. If somebody has
when we do our members' appraisals and how difficult we find that to get done and completed. You know, I don't know what officers were hoping for, but my instinct is that to kind of label it as a relatively light touch to start with, so that members have got an idea that, you know, they should be spending no more than half an hour on this or whatever you hope to do, I think would help. Otherwise, some members may be, you know, do an awful lot, others may just take it off. So to me, it would help me seeing this if I sort of had an expectation of the time and commitment you were looking for in doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to be an arduous exercise, but I think, yeah, we can bring some clarity to how long we'd expect that to be filled in, but I wouldn't expect it to be sort of a very arduous exercise. If anything, it's kind of the immediate thought. Do you understand what terms of reference are? It's probably a yes, no, and then get the point that maybe we should make those clearer and more available, in particular in training, induction, things of that sort. So, yeah, no, I'll take that point.
Right. Any more comments? I take it this questionnaire has come to us, but it'll also go to NPA, so we get another copy of it anyway.
I wouldn't propose necessarily taking to MPA because it's a FRAS assessment.
Right,
The
okay.
members in this committee, so I wouldn't propose taking it to MPA.
Okay. Okay. Right, the recommendation, ladies and gentlemen, we consider the draft questionnaire and suggest any amendments that they wish to like to see to the questions selected ahead of the first questionnaire being sent out in February 24. Okay. One, John.
And it needs to be sent to members in an editable form, so Excel spreadsheet, so we can.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, before we go on to private business, I suggest we have a minute and a half respite and then carry on. But thank you, Selena,
Thank you, Chair.
for joining us today. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Does anyone want to